Fantasy Baseball on Deck, everybody. This is Austin, and I've been gone away from you guys for 2 weeks now. And frankly, that's unacceptable. What's happened since then? I've gotten a new job. I started a new grad semester. I got food poisoning. I kind of got food poisoning again, and haven't really slept a whole lot. There's lots of excuses, but anywho, we're here. And what do we like to start with? Well, we like to start with our bona fides. What's happened since I've seen you last? Oh my gosh, what happened? I incurred my first loss. I was the second highest scoring points leader of the week, and sometimes that just happens. But we're not. These little goofy things happen every now and then. It's one loss. Who cares? Whatever. You guys care. I lost all my credibility. Why would you ever listen to me now at this point? I understand. Throw me under the bus. I freaking deserve it. But let's look back and see kind of what's our current situation. So I'm still number one as expected. My points for I'm kicking butt over the second place points for person. It's approximately 400 points, and rank wise, my goal is to have scored more than 1,000 points in the second place points holder. Just to be a jerk about it, sort of thing. So that's the way things are going in this league. Not really anything super new from a transactional perspective. The team is looking as just about as similar as you've seen them last. I talked about the Aaron Nola trade a couple weeks ago for now Trevor Story, who is absolutely blowing up, which is good to see. But these things happen. Whatever, we move on. But Mike Clevin just recently got put on the 15-day IL, which is not what you want to see. I think he said he had a forearm or a tricep issue. But as these issues come, we deal with them and such. Man, this has been really interesting so far. Now we go to our next league, and we are still undefeated if we go up here. Freddie Kluber, 6-0. And what are the big things? I am leading in points for by a considerable amount. This league is more closer to the points for. And you know what? I'm just gonna get this out of the way. Always, if you want to be good at fantasy baseball, always be watching baseball. It's a crazy thing to think about, but I don't give a shit about the Texas Rangers or the LA Angels. I have a lot of LA Angels across my fantasy league, so I guess I care a little bit about them. But just keep it on. If you're watching it or you're even passively watching it, you're just always more informed than the next guy. So that's another thing. But I'm actually going to minimize this window so it doesn't distract me from the actual video that we're doing. But kind of looking at the points for what's important, if we want to go look at what specifically is setting me apart, though I am doing exceptionally well in the batting categories, I'm second. I'm one run behind first place in runs. I am leading, or I guess I'm tied for first place in RBIs, doing well in that regard. But if I go to innings pitched, I'm doing okay in innings pitched. I'm fourth overall. But the the thing that's the most important, and what the bonus are strikeouts. I'm kicking ass in strikeouts, and that's the big thing is you think about for batters, what are the bonuses? Well, if you get a bonus if you get a stolen base. Well, there's a lot of work into getting a stolen base. You got to get a good jump. You got to get all the way to second base without being thrown out. You got to get on base to even start. I think about back in the day how Billy Hamilton could have been the most valuable, one of the more valuable guys in all of fantasy if he could have just gotten on base. That's the whole thing. But for pitchers, it's there's an opportunity for a bonus every single batter that comes up. Are you going for the putout? Yes, but we maximize our point per batter by 200%. If we're able to get strikeouts, what would have been 1 point, a dribbler down to third base thrown out at first is now, if it's strikeouts converted to 2 points. You just multiply that across the year, and it equates to wins. And then obviously you can always make sure that you have really good closers, just people that play for you day in and day out. Liam Hendricks just got me a save a little while ago, and that was pretty exciting to watch, as I'm always pretty pumped up by him. And similar, if I go back over here and go back to, I'm doing a really good job at this video. 2 weeks into it, I've lost my mojo, but again, go over to the important stat here, 492 strikeouts, like absolutely kicking ass. So let's go over to the players that I am looking to add. And maybe if I was more timely about getting to you guys, then I'd be able to talk about, these players in better regards being like more timely information. At this point, some of this stuff is old news. But I want to talk about what's important about Adley Rutschman. Does your catcher suck on your roster? If your answer is yes, most likely drop the catcher. You don't have to roster a catcher. Very rarely, and I'm holding on to Will Smith because I just please Dodgers keep putting him in the DH spot. He's only gotten a couple DH reps, but I'm holding on to Will Smith because a little bit of pride. If it was anyone but Will Smith, I would have dropped him and just had an extra pitcher or an extra relief pitcher because there's no penalty for that for having extra relief pitchers. Adley Rutschman, he's starting off a little bit slow, but he's supposed to be the Baltimore Orioles franchise player for the next 10 years plus. He has the every single pedigree to be an every single day catcher. Talked about as the next Buster Posey from like a defensive perspective. Very, very versatile. But what's more newsworthy and what's more necessary from a fantasy perspective is if you go up here and you click on the eligibility tab, this kind of shows you what positions players are getting put in at. And what's important about Adley Rutschman is not only is he primarily the catcher, but since he's gotten called up just, a week ago, he's only gotten this many games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games under his belt. He's already played in the DH spot twice. So when he's not behind the plate, they are putting him into that DH spot. He is going to get 500 bats a season. And, if you're still able to get a hold of him, great. If you need to roster a catcher, absolutely look at this as an option if he's still available. But again, I should have been more timely. I mentioned it on my my Twitter account, but I should have been more timely about announcing Adley Rutschman is finally healthy. So if you need a catcher, Adley Rutschman is a great option. If you're in a keeper league, Adley Rutschman for sure hasn't been available for whatever reason. If you're able to get a hold of him, grab Adley Rutschman. Nolan Gorman was leading the minor leagues in home runs. He is, there's a couple things factoring in here. Primarily, he is a second baseman, at least in the major leagues. He's played third base in the minors. I couldn't believe that he came up without a third base tag, which kind of sucks because he's not going to gain one now that Nolan Arenado is there. He's not going to get any third base reps. But what's great about him slotting in at the second base slot is for the already versatile Tommy Edman owners Tommy Edman already had a second base eligibility and an outfield eligibility. Tommy Edman has just made his 5th start yesterday at shortstop. So Tommy Edman should be gaining his shortstop eligibility on top of second base and outfield, making him even more valuable. So Nolan Gorman, for the people who have had recent injuries to your second base position, so the people that have like a Brandon Lowe situation, Nolan Gorman might be a pretty solid add, and they are putting him in, kind of in the cleanup spot. So, and actually, there's so much information that I'm trying to keep a hold of. So let's go check that for sure. MLB.com, keep that just favorited for you guys. And I don't think that St. Louis played today. I know that St. Louis didn't play today. It's just now that I'm in the, now that I'm going live, I'm sputtering. Go to box scores, and we look at this lineup here. Edman leading off, Donovan, Gorman at the lower end. So he was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hole, which is fine. But he's hitting 294 to start the season. Juan Yepez he's later in the show or whatever, but he's another guy that I'm going after pretty hard. But Gorman, if you have it a second base slot, it's generally a pretty skimpy position. Look for he's supposed to get the opportunity because he led the minors in home runs, big power hitter. And I'll stop talking about Nolan Gorman, but only 30% owned. So if you're going to get on that train, get on it fast. Kyle Lewis was the 2019 AL Rookie of the Year. Kyle Lewis, home run derby candidate for sure. And what's good about Kyle Lewis he started out, he played his first game yesterday. He had 2 hits. He went over 4 today, which is that's fine. But overall, with Kyle Lewis, what's good is he's going to be playing in the middle of the lineup or in a good batting order spot with a sputtering Seattle team that should be scoring more runs. I can't believe that their offense has not been as good as as they have to start the season. But Kyle Lewis is going to be primarily the DH every day. And I think that that's good because, they're just making it very apparent that his bat is so important that they're going to keep him out of the field and try to just keep him healthy moving forward. So Kyle Lewis, the fact that he's only 13% owned to start the year is wild, given that he's only a couple years removed from being the AL Rookie of the Year. And he might have been the 2020 AL 2020. He was the 2020. He was not 2019. He was the 2020 AL Rookie of the Year. So he's absolutely a 30-plus home run guy. He just got a late start to the season. So I really look at this as a freebie. I have been trying like hell to trade away, an outfield spot plus like a relief pitcher or something like that to make a spot for Kyle Lewis. And it just hasn't happened yet. But we'll hope and pray that he kind of stays under the radar for just long enough to be able to acquire this man. And I don't have Yepez on here, but I need to talk about him. I'll get back to him. William Contreras, this guy is only 6% rostered. But the thing with William Contreras is that go back to this eligibility slot. He's such a good hitter. Yes, he's a real young guy. He's hitting 262 on the season, 417 over the last week. He's such a good hitter. The Atlanta Braves have so much faith in them that he's primarily a catcher. He's not going to play over Travis d'Arnaud every day, but they've even tried slotting him in at left field. He had a horrible error the other day where a ball rolled all the way to the fence, and that didn't go too well. Marcell Ozuna has always been a defensive liability per se, but his bat's so valuable that they're just trying to find places to put him, and he's already played in the DH slot as well 3 times. So keep an eye on William Contreras because every time that he goes out there, he's usually hitting the 2-hole for the Braves, who are underperforming to start the year, just like the White Sox are underperforming to start the year offensively. But the Braves are going to score runs. They're going to get back to their normal selves soon enough. But if William Contreras is making regular starts in the 2-hole of that offense, this is absolutely someone to acquire, especially if you need a catcher. There's 2 catchers on this list, which is kind of wild. And if we want to just keep with the batters being the focus, let's go down to Santiago Espinal, and I think that I got that one right. What's good about Santiago is not only has he been productive, he's hitting 284 the last week, almost 300 for a Toronto team who also is underperforming from an offensive perspective. But we all know what that offensive juggernaut can be when it's completely healthy and running, full steam ahead. He's only 20% owned and on categories. Third base eligibility is huge because there's not that many third basemen. We've talked about this before. Second base is also pretty skimpy, so he hits on 2 of those really valuable positions, and he's hitting the 2-hole for Toronto. So he's also a top of the order kind of guy. And he's already got some stolen bases to start the year. So a speed guy, got a couple home runs. He's already played 141 at bats, so we don't expect him to be a big home run guy. But just the fact that he's at the top of that lineup with Billy Big Bats right behind him, being Bo Bichette, he's right. Well, he's right behind. He's right behind George Springer, and then right behind him is the Guerreros and the Bo Bichettes and the Hernandezes of the world who can knock him around, and he's got plenty of speed to make that up. So a guy to keep on your radar if you need a second base or a third base eligibility guy. And while I'm still on it, I'm going to go to Yepez, who I have a lot of faith in. I have him in my other league. Again, I haven't been able to ship out Owen Miller yet. I keep trying to trade him, and I might just have to drop him. But Juan Yepez kind of gives me a little bit of Yordan Alvarez feels, and he's not nearly as big and strong as Yordan Alvarez because Yordan Alvarez is a mutant. But Juan Yepez, big, strong kid, first base and outfield eligibility, which is pretty awesome, pretty versatile. For the season overall, hitting 288. He was hitting 350 to start the season. That's never sustainable. He's starting to tail off a little bit, but his consistent plays are still, really quality and for sure ownership worthy. So this is a guy I'm trying to get a hold of in all of my leagues. I have him in 2 out of 3. This is the one I don't have him in. But again, I'm trying to trade valuable players that I have for one quality player back so I can fill with guys that are in the free agency pool so that I'm always maximizing on my value that I have. So I don't want to just drop Owen Miller into the free agency pool. Maybe nobody wants him. But my idea is that a player like Owen Miller who has eligibility at first base and second base both, being super flexible and being one of the top guys still at his, across those two positions, who's tailing off very, very fast, like the entire Indians offense, which was expected. I'd just like to trade him sooner than later. I might just have to drop him for Juan, and if I miss out on Juan, I'll be really sad. But this is a player that I'm going to try to get a hold of in every league. I have him in 2 out of 3. Next down, 2 relief pitchers. So Danny Jimenez, if he is somehow still available, in your fantasy baseball league, I can tell you that I win fantasy baseball just about every year because I have one of the Oakland Athletics closers, and that doesn't have anything to do with the Oakland Athletics, but their management and their scheme traditionally is we have an incredible closer and we throw him every night regardless of how many nights he's thrown in a row. If it's a close situation, he's getting the ball. So it currently says right now that he has 9 saves. That hasn't taken into account tonight's stat, which he just acquired his 10th save, being the 25th of May today. No strikeouts, but just straight across the board. His ERA is incredible. He's only given up 1 earned run, I think, the entire year. But Danny Jimenez outright stole this job from Torino, and he's here to stay. I can't believe that he's only rostered in 38% of leagues. Danny Jimenez, if you need a solid closer, the Oakland Athletics, if they win a game, it's going to be a close game. Danny Jimenez is right there. Similar to if you think about like Josh Hader, the offense for the Milwaukee Brewers is not super good. Their pitching staff is incredible. So you got to think about Josh Hader just getting so many more opportunities to close compared to a guy like Craig Kimbrel, because the Dodgers are always just winning by so many runs. He doesn't even have an opportunity to come in for a save. But again, these teams, these middle teams, these like just below average teams, when they do win games, say if they win 3 games out of 7 days, 4 games out of 7 days, that closer is going to get an opportunity at just about every time. So that's the big thing with these guys. And Danny Jimenez is another guy I was trying to add to my roster, but I was trying to trade people and not just drop value to the free agency pool. So I missed out on him, but that happens. And this guy in particular, he's all over the prospects. I usually don't get to these guys quick enough, but it is one of those things where you're giving up proven value for a higher quality player, but you're also supplementing in someone who is a little less proven. But Danny Jimenez seems pretty freaking solid. And again, if you look at these pitchers, kind of we talked about across the way, always more strikeouts than innings pitched, and their ERAs are always really good too. Clay Holmes has been absolutely incredible this year. You talk about an ERA 0.40, 23 strikeouts across 23 innings. That's okay. But if he's going to take over this closing duty job for the New York Yankees while Aroldis Chapman is hurt, this is a super awesome guy to have on your roster. He's going to get, he's 57% owned. He's owned in way more leagues than Danny Jimenez is up here. That's just because New York is a big roster team, big market team. I've slept 2 hours in the last 48, so my mind's kind of sputtering a little bit. I wanted to touch on, but so Clay Holmes, if he's available and you need quality relief pitcher help, it seems like he's going to be a pretty reliable guy to land on. But for the long-term full season, I think that Danny Jimenez is probably the better answer for an entire season. And then Chapman, whenever he comes back, will slot back into that role with Clay Holmes. So he's temporary. Devin Williams, just as a reminder, keep an eye out on Josh Hader. Josh Hader is the best relief pitcher in all of baseball. If you have Josh Hader, don't let go of him. I've tried to trade for him in my leagues that I don't have him for, and people, I've almost been able to make things happen. But regardless, Josh Hader, he went on bereavement. He's been out for a couple of days, and Devin Williams is already up to 4 saves. So it says 3 over there, but just got another save today. Devin Williams is probably the second, like he was the reliever of the year a couple years ago. One of the scariest relief pitchers in all of baseball. Just happens to be that he's a setup man for the Brewers instead of the closer. So anytime that Josh Hader gets hurt or he's on bereavement, COVID, whatever, pick up Devin Williams, even if it's a couple days, because like what I said, when the Brewers win games, usually it's by a couple runs because their offense is so poor, but their pitching doesn't give up any runs. So Devin Williams, it's a guy to just keep your eyeball on. Hader should be coming back soon, so he shouldn't be, necessarily rostered right now. But these periods of time, the second the Hader goes out with an injury, Devin Williams becomes one of the most valuable commodities, really, in all fantasy baseball, given the Milwaukee Brewers situation. And I'm going to bring up Dylan Cease. Dylan Cease is a weirdo. Dylan Cease is like one of my favorite players in all fantasy baseball. I should have him in 2 of my leagues. And I really just effed up one of the drafts and just, I was distracted making a YouTube video instead of really focusing on the draft itself. Even though I ended up with players that I really wanted, it worked out. But anyways, these last couple outings, he's such an oddball, but he is so freaking valuable. This last outing, he was only out there for 3 innings. He still acquired 4 strikeouts. The 7 earned runs are goofy. I don't know how. I don't have any explanation for that. A couple starts before then, versus the Yankees, 4 innings pitched, 11 strikeouts. His strikeouts just always make up for it. So you kind of look at this. You look at the state for the New York Yankees some days ago. The 4 innings pitched, 6 hits, 6 earned runs, 11 strikeouts. He still netted a positive 3 points. It's just that's the power of a strikeout. It's those bonus points per batter that he is making productive outs. That's worth every bit of it. His ERA has now climbed above 4, which is wild. He's going to figure things out. He's 25 years old. This is a guy who's got all of the talent in the world. He's just figuring things out at the major league level and has little to no run support for whatever reason. The White Sox started off super slow. So this is a guy that I would trade for. I have him on my roster already, so that's not necessarily the situation for this league. I don't have him for the other, so I'll try to trade for him again moving forward. But Dylan Cease is a guy you absolutely should message the person who owns Dylan Cease and just say something in the words of, what's Dylan Cease's availability, and ideally they're still pissed off about this negative 16 point outing that they kind of forget how quality he's been, and he's been a top 10 starting pitcher all of fantasy baseball. It's just having a negative 16 point outing is going to drop you 25 top 25 starting pitcher in baseball, and he just had a negative 16 outing. So that kind of brings to light how valuable he is. So that's the guy that I would reach out for and see what his availability is. And man, that's the end of the players to add. So I want to go over to the closer chart, because if you go to ESPN, which sucks, we've talked about this. This is why I have a YouTube channels, because ESPN has they're the worldwide leader in sports, but then they have the biggest platform to play fantasy sports, whatever it may be. But they have the worst information. So they come out just 13 hours ago with the most up-to-date closer depth charts, and I just wanted to point out what is true and what is not. Jorge Lopez is great. He is the closer for the Baltimore Orioles. Hansel Robles has just been nominated as the closer for the Boston Red Sox, but he is having a pretty pitiful year to start the year, and just blew a couple saves in a row. So he's not reliable. Matt Barnes isn't reliable. I wouldn't roster a Boston Red Sox closer. Clay Holmes, pretty safe bet right now. He's going to be the positive guy. Jonathan Lasagna has always been super duper productive as well, but you only want a relief pitcher on your roster for the most part. Um, if they are the saves guy. Now, if you have a Tanner Hawk or a Spencer Strider, that's different because they're kind of being treated as piggyback starters. So they're getting like they're skipping the first couple of innings and then just jumping straight to the fifth inning where they become like in line for a win, which is almost this is the situation with Strider tonight and almost the situation with Hawk tonight as well. So they're relief guys that you should absolutely hold on to because they're lengthy inning guys that like can steal wins. But if you're not getting a save, then you shouldn't have a relief pitcher on your roster. Ryan Thompson has horrible stats. This is not the closer for the Tampa Bay Rays. They're going to figure out something other than him for the time being. Jordan Romano is locked in. He is their closer. I'm just going to talk about the people that aren't major stakeholders. Gregory Soto is not necessarily the primary closer because he didn't get the close tonight. And if I check over here because my mind is running blank and I'm running on fumes, mostly those fumes are caffeine. The Detroit Tigers got a win yesterday. Today is the 25th. They got a win today, and it was Andrew Chafin, who's one of my favorite players in baseball because he's just funny. He's fun to look at. But Andrew Chafin got the save today, so I wouldn't own a Detroit Tigers closer because it's just clear that role isn't solidified. Scott Barlow's locked in. He's got a 1.86 ERA. He's awesome. It's just that the Royals can't score any runs and their pitching staff's kind of poor. So he's kind of a shitty situation. If they do win games, he's going to be every part of. He's usually getting thrown in the eighth inning and hoping that he can stretch across too. But just doesn't have any run support. And that's kind of tough because he's a really good player. Johan Duran, I don't know. They've been promoting that he is the closer for the Twins for the last couple of weeks, and Emilio Pagan seems to get the nods primarily every single time. Emilio Pagan is the closer for the Minnesota Twins. Duran just got a close tonight because Pagan's worn out. He's gotten two saves almost in the last couple of days. So he was taking a break today as Duran got a save again yesterday. But Pagan is the starting closer. Duran has gone weeks without even making an appearance, let alone be the closer for a playoff winning team in the Twins. So I don't understand why the writers for ESPN are promoting this guy so hard, given that he is very clearly not the closer, the primary closer. So while the Twins appeared at closer committee style bullpen under the manager, Duran's skill set look closer for a clear closer candidate. So it looks like skill has the closest look. It's the closest look. They don't know anything. They're just trying to be the first to say yada yada yada. So maybe in a couple months, Jan Duran will be the guy, but he's not. Emilio Pagan is the guy to have as a closer for the Twins. That's kind of frustrating to see that because they're just trying to beef up their whatever. So Ryan Presley's locked in. Iglesias is locked in. Danny Jimenez, we talked about. Paul Sewald, I think, has actually taken over the role finally from Diego Castillo. I had Diego as he was a Tampa Bay Ray, and it was like pretty solid. But Paul Sewald's more of a reliable relief pitcher. Castillo being wild. I think that the Mariners looked at themselves as a playoff team this year. I looked at them as a playoff team this year. So I think they're going to put their contracts aside and just invest into Paul Sewald being the closer from now on. It's just they don't win a whole lot of games. They've only won 17 games to start the year. They don't get a whole lot of run support, but we could see that. We could see that changing with how young their pitching staff is, and their big prospects that are even continuing to come up. So look at Paul Sewald as being a pretty solid option for a closer. Closing opportunities. And Joe Barlow, he's plenty good too. It's just, as we know, the Texas Rangers don't score any runs. Kenley Jansen is going to fall apart eventually, like he always does. He blew the save yesterday and then got a win out of it in extra innings, just bullshit. But If you have Kenley Jansen, I honestly think that you should trade him sooner than later. He's going to get an opportunity for saves a lot. It just seems like he's a guy that just kind of, if you can if you can package him with another player for Josh Hader, I think you'll be exceptionally happier with the result. He's older. He gets hurt a lot. I think this is his absolute peak value. Marlins wise, you don't want any of the Marlins closers. I think that they're going to have plenty of opportunity for wins coming up in the future because their pitching staff is so good. Dylan Flower and Anthony Bender are the least reliable pitchers to throw out there. That's just not, you don't want to deal with that. Edwin Diaz is finally starting to lose his brain. He blew a save yesterday after the Mets Giants game I watched into almost 2 o'clock in the morning last night. Was one of the most wild baseball games I've ever seen, back and forth. And Edwin Diaz blew it, as he usually does. I stay away from him at all costs every year because he just seems like he's got all the talent in the world, but he can't control where the hell the ball is going. So, this ball has a ton of movement, but I don't even know where it's going, sort of thing with Edwin Diaz. He walks people too much. Not a player that I want on my roster. So if you have him, he's going to get all the opportunities for saves, but it's just one of those players, just not as reliable as some of those couple top tier relief pitchers that we've kind of talked about. Corey Knebel is locked in as the Phillies closer. He's had a really, really good year. He just seems like he hasn't had not a ton of opportunity to get saves, because it seems like when the Phillies win, they win by a lot. When they lose and they don't throw him in when they don't need him. So he's been solid. Tanner Rainey, he's been great, but the Nationals aren't going to win enough games for him to be rosterable. I wouldn't own either of the Cubs closers because they're kind of going by a committee. So if you're a committee, that means you don't have one. Stay away from it. Strickland got the save today for the Reds, so no one freaking knows who the Reds closer is. They don't have one, so don't own the Reds closer. And also, they're bad at baseball, so you don't want them. Josh Hader, we talked about, he's the best in baseball. David Bednar's having a really good year. It's just the Pirates are going to get a ton of opportunities for wins. And Giovanni Gallegos, if they are finally sticking with him, they seem to be shaky because I don't know, he's all over the place. I think Cardinals are going to be at very least second place in this division, which is pretty easy to say given where the Brewers are. But I think that the bats have a lot more give than the pitching has to give eventually. I think the bats will eventually overtake in this just overall crappy division. So look for Gallegos to have plenty of opportunities, and if he can hold a job, then he'll be pretty valuable. But a guy that I would stay away from unless you absolutely have to roster him. So that is my thought, and I forgot about the NL West. So I'm going to talk about them. Mark Melancon I think he's like in the top 5 with saves for the year. So he's got a ton of saves, and he only has a very, very little amount of points because he just doesn't strike anyone out. From a fantasy perspective, I have no interest in Mark Melancon. The only reason he was valuable last season is because he was just getting save bonuses. He doesn't strike anyone out. He ERA is okay, but that's about it. So wouldn't keep Mark Melancon. Daniel Bard, if he still has any appeal. Funny enough, I saw Kris Bryant landing on the IL again. That's hilarious because I don't know how he gets drafted so high every year. He's so overrated and just can't stay on the field. But Daniel Bard playing in Colorado, I don't think is. I think he's overrated. He's a very, very good player. I just hate his team. I don't think the Rockies are going to win enough games for him to be rosterable, and that's somebody that I traded. I traded Daniel Bard for Brian Reynolds and Framber Valdez. So, I'm still pretty happy about that exchange. But Bard, good player. I expect him to probably get traded once they fall out of the race. Craig Kimbrell hasn't made really many mistakes this year. His strikeout rate's a little bit down from last year, but he always does that in a new place. He's just not getting a ton of opportunities because the Dodgers are winning by too many runs. So don't get discouraged with Craig Kimbrell. It's better to have him on, one of the best teams in baseball, the best team in baseball. Winning by too much than a team that just doesn't win very often. So don't sell Craig Kimbrell for too little. And then, Taylor Rogers is locked in as the San Diego closer. And Camilo Doval, the second that The one Jake McGee comes back and the other Rogers twin gets his shit together, like it's a committee by rotation. So don't necessarily commit to any of the closers for the Giants, because even though Duvall has, I think now 8 saves, I think McGee is on the IL when he comes back. I think that's going to become muddy. Is exactly what it was before he got hurt. So I wouldn't keep a Giants closer. So I think that's probably one of my more boring episodes of the series. But you know what? That's what we do around here. We talk about baseball. Super freaking boring, right? But anyways, I appreciate you guys supporting me. Sorry that I wasn't able to get a video out as soon as I would like to, but life's been nuts. But anyhow, I bid you adieu. Good night, everybody. Good evening. Good morning.
Fantasy baseball on deck. Adley Rutschman is healthy and playing every day. Nolan Gorman was caught up. Tommy Edman now the shortstop, and that's pretty darn cool. My Reds are 10 games back. They traded away all the assets, and now I need some gas X, because our roster is one fart away from becoming an accidental shit stain. Death taxes and Kris Bryant to the IL. ML, please don't rob Jose Ramirez of an MVP because he resides in Cleveland. Whoop-ow! Nailed that one. Hell yeah. Good for me.